Have you ever wondered why some African nations are incredibly wealthy while others are extremely poor? It's a question that has puzzled economists and policymakers alike for decades. Africa, a continent brimming with natural resources and potential, presents a paradox in terms of its economic landscape. Let's think of Africa as a grand tapestry where each thread represents a unique nation. Some threads shimmer with the luster of wealth, while others are worn and frayed, representing poverty. This is the economic disparity in Africa, a stark contrast that is as complex as it is concerning. On one side of the spectrum, we find nations like Nigeria and South Africa. Nigeria, blessed with abundant oil reserves, is one of Africa's wealthiest nations. South Africa, with its robust mining industry and well-developed infrastructure, also stands out as an economic powerhouse. Yet, on the flip side, we find countries like Burundi, one of the poorest nations not just in Africa but in the world. Burundi, despite its fertile lands and hard-working population, struggles with poverty, a situation exacerbated by political instability and a lack of access to global markets. Between these two extremes, there's a vast range of economic realities, each shaped by a unique blend of factors. Natural resources, governance, access to global markets, historical legacies, and even geographical location all play a part in this economic jigsaw puzzle. But why does this matter? Well, understanding the economic disparity in Africa is the first step towards addressing it. It helps us identify the factors that boost prosperity and those that hinder it, paving the way for policies and initiatives that can help foster economic growth and reduce poverty. So, as we pull back the layers of Africa's economic disparity, we're not just exploring an economic phenomenon, we're embarking on a journey to understand the opportunities and challenges faced by this diverse continent, a journey that could hold the key to unlocking Africa's vast potential. Now let's delve deeper into this economic disparity by looking at some specific African countries. Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, is a prime example of wealth stemming from natural resources. The West African powerhouse is blessed with an abundance of oil, accounting for over 2/3 of government revenue and nearly 90% of its export income. This vast oil wealth, discovered in the late 1950s, has shaped Nigeria's economic landscape, transforming it into a leading player on the global stage. But, as with many tales of riches, Nigeria's oil wealth is a story with two sides. On one hand, it has fueled the country's economic growth, driving investment in infrastructure, education, and health. It has allowed Nigeria to build cities that rival those of the developed world and to fund initiatives that have improved the lives of millions. On the other hand, the oil wealth has been a source of conflict and inequality. A significant portion of Nigeria's population still lives in poverty, despite the country's enormous oil revenues. The oil-rich Niger Delta, for instance, remains one of the country's poorest regions, marred by environmental degradation and social unrest. Moreover, the oil sector's dominance has led to an over-reliance on this singular resource, making the economy vulnerable to global oil price fluctuations. And then there's the issue of corruption, with billions of dollars in oil revenue allegedly siphoned off by corrupt officials, depriving the country of resources that could be used for development. Finally, let's not forget that oil is a finite resource. As reserves dwindle and the world moves towards cleaner energy sources, Nigeria faces the challenge of diversifying its economy and finding new sources of wealth. So, despite its vast oil wealth, Nigeria's economic story is far from a fairy tale. It's a cautionary tale of riches, revealing the complexities and contradictions of a resource-dependent economy. While Nigeria's oil wealth has boosted its economy on paper, it hasn't translated into widespread prosperity. Moving to the southern tip of the continent, we find South Africa, a country with a highly developed economy, yet marked by deep economic divide. As we delve into the economic landscape of South Africa, it's clear that it's a land of contrasts. On one hand, it boasts the second largest economy in Africa, brimming with rich natural resources, a thriving tourism industry, and a well-developed infrastructure. South Africa is a hub for many multinational corporations and has a robust financial sector, making it an economic powerhouse on the continent. However, beneath this glittering veneer of success lies a stark reality. The economic divide in South Africa is one of the most severe in the world, A significant portion of the population still lives in poverty, with the top 10% of the population holding more than half of the country's wealth. This inequality stems from a complex web of historical and systemic factors. Apartheid, the system of institutionalized racial segregation that existed until the early 90s, left a lasting legacy of economic disparity. The majority of wealth and resources were concentrated among a small, predominantly white population, while the vast majority, who were black, were left impoverished. Post-apartheid policies aimed at redressing these imbalances have seen mixed results. While there has been some progress, particularly in the growth of the black middle class, wealth distribution remains largely unchanged. Furthermore, the country grapples with high unemployment rates, particularly among the youth, exacerbating the economic divide. Yet despite these challenges, there's a sense of resilience and potential in South Africa. The country's burgeoning tech industry, for instance, offers a glimmer of hope. If harnessed correctly, these sectors could play a significant role in bridging the economic divide, creating jobs, and driving inclusive growth. But for this to happen, concerted efforts are needed to address systemic issues, improve access to quality education and healthcare, and foster an environment conducive to entrepreneurship and innovation. Despite being one of Africa's most developed economies, South Africa is also one of the most unequal. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Burundi, one of the poorest countries in the world. This East African nation presents a sobering contrast to the wealth of countries like Nigeria and South Africa. Burundi's economic struggles are multifaceted, but the primary factor is its heavy reliance on agriculture. Over 90% of the population depends on subsistence farming. This dependence on agriculture leaves the country vulnerable to the vagaries of weather and global commodity prices. A single drought or a drop in the price of coffee, Burundi's primary export, can plunge the nation deeper into poverty. But it's not just about the weather or global markets. Burundi's agricultural sector is hampered by outdated farming techniques and a lack of access to modern technology. The result is low crop yields and food insecurity. And without the means to invest in infrastructure and education, the cycle of poverty continues. Another significant challenge is the aftermath of a violent civil war that lasted over a decade. The war devastated the economy, infrastructure, and social fabric. It left behind a legacy of trauma, political instability, and a population that is one of the youngest in the world. The majority of Burundians are under the age of 17, which means a large part of the population is not yet of working age and requires significant investment in education and healthcare. The country also struggles with corruption. Despite efforts to tackle it, corruption remains entrenched at all levels of society, further hampering economic growth and development. Burundi's economic challenges are indeed daunting, but it's important to remember that they are not insurmountable. With the right policies and international support, the country could harness its agricultural potential, invest in its young population, and begin to break the cycle of poverty. Burundi's situation is a stark contrast to the wealth of countries like Nigeria and South Africa. But it serves as a powerful reminder that wealth and poverty often exist side by side, and that understanding the reasons behind such disparities is the first step towards addressing them. The economic disparity in Africa is not a simple issue. It has deep-rooted causes and requires thoughtful solutions. At the core of this issue is a complex interplay of historical and contemporary factors. Among the historical factors, colonialism plays a significant role. During the colonial period, Africa was partitioned, exploited, and left with a legacy of economic structures designed to benefit the colonizers. These structures often focused on extracting wealth rather than building sustainable economies. In the post-colonial era, many African nations have grappled with challenges such as corruption, economic mismanagement, and political instability. Corruption, in particular, has been a major impediment to economic growth and development. It drains resources, discourages investment, and undermines trust in public institutions. Additionally, the exploitation of natural resources has often led to a paradox of plenty. Countries rich in resources like oil or minerals, instead of prospering, have often experienced conflict, corruption, and poor governance. The wealth from these resources has too often benefited a small elite, rather than the broader population. So, how do we address these issues? There's no one-size-fits-all solution, but several strategies could help. Firstly, strengthening governance and fighting corruption is crucial. This involves building robust institutions, promoting transparency, and holding leaders accountable. Secondly, diversifying economies can reduce dependence on a single resource and create more opportunities for growth. This could involve investing in sectors like agriculture, manufacturing, and services. Thirdly, investing in human capital, in education, health, and skills can help to unleash the potential of Africa's young and rapidly growing population. Finally, international cooperation can play a vital role. This could include fairer trade rules, more effective aid, and support for peace and security. In conclusion, addressing economic disparity in Africa is a complex task. It requires a multifaceted approach that takes into account the unique situation of each country. Addressing economic disparity in Africa requires a multifaceted approach, taking into account the unique situation of each country. To wrap up, the economic disparity in Africa is a complex issue with numerous contributing factors. The wealth of nations like Nigeria and South Africa, fueled by oil and minerals, starkly contrasts with the poverty in Burundi. These disparities stem from a variety of causes, including natural resource distribution, economic policies, and historical factors. Yet, within these challenges lies the potential for innovative solutions that could spur economic growth. While the economic disparity in Africa is a significant challenge, it also provides opportunities for innovative solutions and economic growth.